The little girl innocently said, "Sir, my mother has the same ring as you." But when the millionaire looked at her intently, he instantly fainted. What he discovered next changed everything. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Marcus Thompson cut his prime ribeye with mechanical precision, the silver knife gleaming under the soft amber glow of Belhaven's crystal chandeliers. At 33, he commanded a real estate empire worth $200 million. Yet tonight, he sat alone in the restaurant's most exclusive private dining room, surrounded by empty chairs that seemed to mock his solitude. The ancestral signet ring on his pinky finger caught the candlelight as he reached for his glass of 25-year-old bourbon. The platinum band bore an intricate Celtic knot design forged in 1923 for his great-grandfather. Only 3 such rings existed in the world, one buried with his father 2 years ago, one on his finger, and the third. Marcus pushed that memory deep into the vault where he kept all his regrets. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Atlanta's skyline sparkled like scattered diamonds, each light representing someone living a life fuller than his own. Success had cost him everything that mattered, but at least the pain had dulled to a manageable ache. "Excuse me, mister. Are you eating all by yourself?" Marcus looked up, startled. A little girl stood beside his table, maybe 7 years old, with a cascade of auburn curls that caught the light like spun copper. Her chocolate-brown eyes held an innocence that made his chest tighten unexpectedly. She wore a faded pink dress that had been lovingly mended at the hem, clearly second-hand but clean and pressed with care. "I am, sweetheart." His voice softened automatically. "Are you lost? This is a pretty fancy place for someone your age." The child shook her head, those remarkable eyes studying him with surprising intensity. "My mama works here tonight. She's serving tables in the main dining room because one of the regular waitresses got sick." She pointed toward the bustling restaurant beyond his private sanctuary. "I'm supposed to stay in the back, but I saw you through the window and had to ask you something really important." "What's that, honey?" Her small finger pointed directly at his ring, and Marcus felt his world tilt slightly off its axis. "That beautiful ring you're wearing, my mama has one exactly like it. She keeps it on a silver chain around her neck, hidden under her clothes. She only takes it out when she's really, really sad and needs to remember someone special." The bourbon glass froze halfway to his lips. His heart began hammering against his ribs like a caged bird desperate to escape. What did you say?" "The ring, sir. It has those same swirly patterns and everything. Mama told me it came from someone very, very important, someone who loved her more than the whole world before I was born." "Day." The child's voice dropped to a reverent whisper. "She said it came from my daddy, and that someday he might come back for us." The crystal glass slipped from Marcus's numb fingers, shattering against the marble floor in an explosion of bourbon and broken dreams. Only 3 rings like his existed. His father had worn one until his death. Marcus wore the second, and the third. Dear God, the third had been his grandmother's engagement ring, the one he'd given to Sarah Mitchell 8 years ago in a moment of desperate love, promising her forever before his father's threats drove him away like a coward. "Sarah," he whispered, the name torn from his soul. The little girl's eyes widened with wonder. "You know my mama's name? How do you know my mama?" Marcus tried to stand, tried to breathe, tried to process the impossible truth staring at him with his own eyes. Those weren't just any chocolate-brown eyes. They were his eyes, the same ones he saw in the mirror every morning. The same stubborn chin that had gotten him into trouble as a child. The same way of tilting her head when something puzzled her. Exactly like his mother used to do. His daughter. His beautiful, perfect daughter. The baby Sarah must have been carrying when he ran away, choosing his inheritance over love, money over the woman who had owned his heart completely. The realization crashed over him like a tsunami, stealing his breath and buckling his knees. 8 years. 8 years of birthdays, of bedtime stories, of scraped knees and first words and everything that mattered in life. All lost because he'd been too weak to stand up to his father's demands. His vision blurred as overwhelming guilt and joy warred in his chest. The last thing Marcus Thompson saw before his legs gave out and darkness claimed him was his daughter, the child he'd never known existed, reaching out with small, gentle hands to catch him as his carefully constructed world crumbled to pieces. The first thing Marcus heard was the gentle, rhythmic beeping of medical machines, their electronic symphony pulling him back from the darkness that had claimed him. Hospital sounds. He recognized them from the 2 weeks he'd spent here after his father's heart attack. His eyelids felt weighted with lead, but he forced them open to find himself staring at sterile white ceiling tiles that seemed to blur and shift in his vision. The antiseptic smell filled his nostrils as memories crashed back like a violent storm surge, each wave more devastating than the last. The ring, the little girl with his eyes. Sarah's name whispered like a prayer, the impossible truth that had brought him to his knees. "You're awake." The voice was soft but guarded, carrying years of accumulated hurt beneath its carefully controlled surface, like ice covering a deep wound. Marcus turned his head slowly, his neck protesting the movement. And there she was. Sarah Mitchell sat in the visitor's chair beside his hospital bed, her auburn hair now shorter than he remembered, cut in a practical bob that framed a face that had gained lines of worry and exhaustion around those same beautiful green eyes he'd once lost himself in completely. At 29, she was even more stunning than the 21-year-old girl he'd left behind. But there was a hardness there now, a wariness that made his heart ache with the knowledge that he had put it there. She wore scrubs, blue ones with small teddy bears printed on them, and he realized she must have been working when this happened. Sarah. Her name came out as a croak, his throat raw and dry. How long have I been? 3 hours. They said you had a severe panic attack. Your blood pressure spiked so high they were worried about a stroke. Her voice remained neutral, professional almost, like she was discussing a stranger's condition. Emma insisted on staying until you woke up. She's getting ice cream from the cafeteria with my supervisor, Mrs. Chen. She was very worried about you. Emma. The name felt foreign and precious on his tongue, like speaking in a language he'd forgotten how to use. That's her name? Sarah's carefully maintained composure cracked slightly, and he caught a glimpse of the pain she was working so hard to hide. Emma Rose Thompson Mitchell. Yes, Marcus, she's your daughter. The daughter you never bothered to know existed. The machines beeped faster as his heart rate spiked with the fresh wave of realization. Sarah, I swear to you on my father's grave I never knew. If I had known you were pregnant, you would have what? Fire flashed in her eyes, the same fire he remembered from their fights about his father's disapproval, about the pressure he was under to end their relationship. Stayed, given up your precious inheritance for us. Chosen love over money? We both know that's not true, Marcus. We both know exactly what choice you made when it mattered. It is true. Marcus struggled to sit up, ignoring the IV tube pulling at his arm and the way the room spun slightly with the movement. I loved you more than anything in this world. I still don't. Sarah stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the linoleum floor as she moved to the window, her back rigid with tension. Don't you dare say those words to me now, not after 8 years of silence, not after I spent nights walking the floors with a colicky baby while you were building your empire on the bones of what we used to be. Marcus watched her silhouette against the window, backlit by the city lights of Atlanta spread out below them like scattered diamonds. He remembered how she used to stand that exact same way in his old apartment when she was thinking deeply, when she was wrestling with some problem or decision. Some things never changed, even when everything else had been destroyed. "I found out I was pregnant 2 weeks after you left," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper, each word carefully measured and controlled. 2 weeks, Marcus. I was throwing up every morning and crying every night, and I had no one to tell except the pregnancy test. I called your number dozens of times. It was disconnected. I went to your apartment, new tenants. I even went to your father's office building downtown, to that gleaming tower where he held court like some corporate king. You went to see my father? Marcus felt his blood run cold at the thought of proud, independent Sarah facing down his father's cruelty while pregnant and alone. Sarah turned, and the raw pain in her eyes nearly destroyed him completely. Security threw me out like I was trash, but not before your father made sure I understood exactly what he thought of me. He said the Thompson family had no interest in gold-digging sluts trying to trap their son with fake pregnancy claims. Her voice broke slightly on the words, and Marcus saw her hands shake before she clenched them into fists. Those were his exact words, Marcus. His exact words to a pregnant, terrified 21-year-old girl who just wanted to tell the man she loved that he was going to be a father. Marcus felt physically sick, his stomach churning with a combination of medication and overwhelming guilt. His father had known about the pregnancy, had known Sarah tried to reach him and had said nothing, had let him believe for 8 years that Sarah had simply moved on, found someone else, forgotten about him as easily as discarding yesterday's newspaper. Sarah, God help me, I never knew any of this. He told me you'd found someone else, that you were happier without me dragging you down, he said. Marcus swallowed hard, the taste of betrayal bitter in his mouth. He said you'd called once to tell me not to contact you again, that you were engaged to someone who could give you the life you deserved. And you believed him. Anger flared in her voice like a struck match. Just like that, without even trying to verify it, without fighting for us even a little bit? The honest answer would destroy what little remained of his dignity, but he owed her the complete truth, no matter how ugly it made him appear. I was a coward. I was 25 years old and terrified of disappointing him, terrified of being cut off from everything I'd known my whole life. I convinced myself it was better for both of us if I just disappeared. He met her eyes, seeing his own shame reflected there like a mirror. I was wrong. I was selfish and wrong, and I've regretted it every single day since, but regret doesn't undo 8 years of damage. The door opened with a soft whoosh, and Emma burst in carrying a small cup of strawberry ice cream, her face bright with innocent joy. "You're awake! Mama, he's awake!" The happiness in her voice was infectious, and despite the heavy tension filling the room like smoke, both adults couldn't help but smile at her enthusiasm. "I see that, baby. But we need to keep our voices down in the hospital, remember? Other people are trying to rest." Emma approached his bed cautiously, her ice cream forgotten in her excitement. "Are you feeling better, mister?" She looked between her parents expectantly, clearly sensing the weight of the moment, even if she couldn't understand it completely. Marcus's throat closed up entirely, the words he needed to say trapped somewhere between his heart and his mouth. Sarah stepped closer, her hand finding Emma's shoulder in a gesture that was both protective and comforting. "Emma, honey." Sarah's voice was gentle but firm, the voice of a mother who had learned to deliver difficult truths with love. "This is Marcus Thompson. He's your father, your biological father." Emma stared at Marcus with those incredible brown eyes. His eyes, undeniably his eyes, processing this life-changing information with the remarkable resilience that only children possess. The ice cream melted slowly in her cup, forgotten as she studied his face with the intensity of a scientist examining a fascinating specimen. "You're my daddy?" My real daddy? The question was asked with wonder rather than accusation, and Marcus felt something crack open in his chest, something that had been frozen for 8 long years. Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice to remain steady. Up close, he could see even more of himself in her features, details that made his heart race with recognition and regret. The slight dimple in her left cheek when she smiled, exactly like his mother's. The way her eyebrows drew together when she was thinking, a mirror of his own expressions. Even the stubborn cowlick in her hair that refused to lie flat, the same one that had driven his own mother crazy when he was Emma's age. "Why didn't you come see me before?" The question was asked with pure curiosity, no accusation in her young voice, but it hit him harder than any angry words could have. Sarah tensed, ready to intervene and protect both her daughter and Marcus from a conversation that was too complex for a 7-year-old to fully understand. But Marcus raised a gentle hand, asking for the chance to answer honestly. "Because I didn't know about you, sweetheart. If I had known, nothing in the world could have kept me away from you. Not money, not fear, not anything." Emma considered this seriously, her young mind working to fit this new information into her understanding of the world. "Mama said you live far away and couldn't come visit. But you live here in Atlanta, don't you?" "I do. Very close, actually. Too close to have stayed away if I'd known the truth." Emma's next question cut deeper than any sword ever could. "Then why didn't Mama tell you about me?" The innocent question hung in the air like smoke, revealing the complex web of hurt and misunderstanding that had kept this family apart for 7 years. Sarah knelt beside Emma's chair, her movements careful and deliberate as she chose her words with the precision of a surgeon making a delicate incision. "Remember what we talked about, baby? About how sometimes grown-ups make mistakes and it takes a long time to fix them? Sometimes the mistakes are so big that people don't know how to make them right again." Emma nodded solemnly, her young face serious as she absorbed this concept. Then she looked back at Marcus with those devastating brown eyes. "Did you make a big mistake?" "The biggest mistake of my life," Marcus whispered, his voice raw with emotion. "I left your mama when I should have stayed and fought for our love. I thought I was protecting both of us, but I was really just scared of not being good enough." "What were you scared of?" Sarah started to redirect the conversation away from such heavy topics, but Marcus wanted to answer honestly, to give Emma the truth she deserved, even if it painted him in an unflattering light. "I was scared I wouldn't be a good enough father for you, or a good enough partner for your mama. I was scared that I'd mess up everything I touched and hurt the people I loved most." He paused, looking directly at Emma with complete honesty. "But running away just made everything worse. It hurt your mama and kept me from knowing you, and that's the worst thing I've ever done in my life." Emma seemed to consider this carefully, her young mind working to process adult concepts of fear and regret. Finally, she spoke with the simple wisdom that only children possess. "Well, you can't disappoint me now because I just met you. And Mama's the strongest person in the whole world, so she doesn't get disappointed easy anymore." Despite everything, the pain, the regret, the years of separation, Marcus found himself smiling genuinely for the first time in longer than he could remember. "She's pretty amazing, isn't she? The most amazing person ever." Emma's face lit up with love and pride. "She works 3 jobs so we can live in our apartment and buy groceries and save money for my future. She reads to me every single night, even when she's super tired and can barely keep her eyes open. And she makes the best chocolate chip pancakes in the entire universe. They're shaped like Mickey Mouse." 3 jobs. The words hit Marcus like physical blows. While he'd been building his financial empire, acquiring properties, and expanding his wealth, Sarah had been working herself to exhaustion just to keep their daughter fed and housed. The guilt was overwhelming, a crushing weight that made it hard to breathe. "What kind of work does your mama do?" Marcus asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. "She waits tables at the restaurant where you found me. That's her favorite job because the people are nice, and sometimes they give really good tips. And she cleans offices at night after I'm asleep, which is hard because she has to be really quiet when she comes home so she doesn't wake me up. And on weekends, she babysits Mrs. Henderson's twin boys, and they're super loud, but Mama says the money helps us save for important things." Emma ticked off each job on her small fingers with the matter-of-fact acceptance of a child who had never known anything different. "Sometimes she falls asleep reading to me because she's so tired, but I don't mind. I just cover her up with my favorite blanket and whisper, 'Good night.'" Marcus looked at Sarah, who had gone very still during Emma's recitation, her face carefully blank, but her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles were white. The successful, confident woman he'd once known, the girl who'd dreamed of becoming a teacher, who'd wanted to change the world one classroom at a time, had been ground down by years of financial struggle and single motherhood, all because he'd been too weak and selfish to fight for their love. "Emma," Sarah said softly, her voice carefully controlled, "why don't you go find the gift shop? I saw some pretty books there earlier when we first got here. Can I get one? I've been really good, and I finished all my homework yesterday." Sarah hesitated, and Marcus saw the quick, painful calculation in her eyes. Gift shop prices versus their carefully stretched budget, the constant math of poverty that had become second nature to her. "We'll see, baby. Let me check our spending money." "I'll get it for you," Marcus said quickly, pulling out his wallet. "Whatever book you want, sweetheart. It would be my pleasure." Emma's face brightened like sunrise, but Sarah's expression darkened like storm clouds gathering. "That's not necessary, Marcus. We don't need your charity." "It's not charity, it's—" "No." Her voice was firm, carrying the authority of someone who had learned to be strong out of necessity. "We don't need your money, Marcus. We've managed just fine without it for 7 years. After Emma left for the gift shop, promising to stay where they could see her through the glass doors, Marcus turned to Sarah with desperate urgency burning in his chest like fever. The silence between them was heavy with 8 years of unspoken words, unfulfilled dreams, and the weight of choices that couldn't be undone. "How can I make this right, Sarah? Please tell me how to fix what I've broken. I'll do anything, anything at all." Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. It was hollow and bitter, like the echo in an empty house. "Fix this? Marcus, you can't just write a check and make 8 years of abandonment disappear into thin air. You can't buy back bedtime stories and scraped knees and Christmas mornings. You can't purchase the first word she spoke, Mama, by the way, or her first steps, or the night she had pneumonia, and I sat up with her for 3 days straight, terrified she was going to die and I'd have to face it all alone." Each word was like a physical blow, and Marcus absorbed them all, knowing he deserved every one. "Then what can I do? There has to be something, some way to earn your forgiveness, to prove that I'm not the same coward who ran away." "I don't know." Her voice broke slightly, the first crack in the armor she'd built around her heart. "I honestly don't know if this can be fixed at all. Do you have any idea what it was like, Marcus? Do you have any conception of what these years have been like for us?" "Tell me," he said quietly. "Please, I need to understand." Sarah stared out the window at the city lights, her reflection ghost-like in the glass. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper, but every word cut him deeper than a blade. "Do you remember the night you gave me the ring, my 21st birthday?" Marcus closed his eyes, the memory as vivid as if it had happened yesterday instead of 8 years ago. "You were wearing that blue dress with the little white flowers. We went to that Italian place downtown, Antonio's. You ordered the seafood pasta and got sauce on your chin, and I kissed it off and told you I loved you for the first time. And you told me you'd love me forever." That we'd build a life together, get married, have children, grow old together on some front porch watching our grandchildren play. Sarah's laugh was bitter, full of the ashes of dead dreams. I was so naive. I actually believed every word you said. I thought love was enough to conquer anything. I did mean it, every single word. I loved you more than I'd ever loved anything in my life. She turned to face him, and the tears glistening in her eyes nearly destroyed him completely. Then why did you leave me, Marcus? Not the easy answer about your father or the inheritance or the family pressure. The real reason, the truth that lives in your heart. I think you owe me that much after everything. Marcus felt the familiar weight of shame pressing down on his chest like a physical thing, making it hard to breathe. For 8 years, he'd told himself comfortable lies about noble sacrifice and impossible circumstances. But sitting here, facing the woman he'd destroyed and the daughter he'd abandoned, those lies crumbled like ancient paper. Because I was terrified, he whispered, the words torn from the deepest part of his soul. Terrified that I'd end up like my father, cold and distant and incapable of real love. Terrified that I'd hurt you worse by staying than by leaving. Terrified that if I tried to build a life with you, I'd fail at it the way he failed at everything that mattered. So you made that decision for both of us. You decided what was best for me without even asking what I wanted. Yes, and I was wrong about everything. He met her eyes fully, letting her see all of his shame and regret. I was wrong, and I was selfish, and I was a coward. I thought I was protecting you, but I was really protecting myself from the possibility of failure. Sarah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, and Marcus saw that the proud, independent woman he'd fallen in love with was still there, underneath all the hurt and exhaustion. Do you want to know what the worst part was? It wasn't being pregnant and alone, though that was terrifying. It wasn't the morning sickness or the scared looks from my family when they found out. It wasn't even your father's cruelty. What was it? Her voice became very small, vulnerable in a way that made his heart break all over again. It was hoping. For months after Emma was born, every time the phone rang or someone knocked on the door, I hoped it was you. That somehow you'd found out about her and realized you'd made a mistake. That you'd come back and we could be the family I'd dreamed we'd be. Her voice hardened again, the protective walls slamming back into place. It took me almost 2 years to stop hoping. 2 years of disappointment every single day before I finally accepted that you were never coming back. Emma appeared in the doorway clutching a picture book about a lost puppy finding its way home. Her face was bright with excitement, and Marcus could see that she'd chosen the story carefully, with the unconscious wisdom that children sometimes possess. I found the perfect one. It's about a puppy who gets separated from his family, but he never gives up looking for them, and they never give up looking for him either. It's about how families always find each other in the end, no matter what. She held up the book proudly. And look, the puppy looks just like the dog I want to get someday, when we have enough money for pet food and vet bills. Sarah quickly composed herself, wiping away the last traces of tears and forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. But Marcus could see the enormous effort it took. Years of being strong for Emma had taught her to hide her pain, to be the steady foundation her daughter needed. That's a wonderful choice, baby. Did you remember to thank Marcus? Thank you, Daddy Marcus. Emma climbed onto the chair beside his hospital bed with the fearless trust of childhood. Will you read it to me? Mama's voice is all scratchy tonight because she had to work really late last night. The casual way she called him Daddy Marcus hit Marcus like a physical blow, not painful, but overwhelming in its innocence and acceptance. He looked at Sarah, who nodded almost imperceptibly, giving him permission for this small but significant moment. I'd love to, Marcus managed, his voice thick with emotion he couldn't quite control. As Emma settled against his side, her small body warm and trusting against him, Marcus opened the book and began to read. The story was simple. A golden retriever puppy separated from its family who spent the whole book searching for home, facing obstacles and setbacks, but never giving up hope. But as he read aloud, his voice growing stronger and more confident with each page, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in 8 long years. Hope. Real, genuine hope that maybe it wasn't too late to build something beautiful from the wreckage of his mistakes. When he finished, Emma looked up at him with those incredible brown eyes, his eyes, and asked the question that would haunt him forever. "Do you think the puppy was sad when it was lost and couldn't find its family?" "Very sad," Marcus answered honestly. "Probably the saddest it had ever been in its whole life. But what matters is that it never gave up looking for its family, and they never gave up looking for it either." Emma nodded seriously, processing this with the gravity it deserved. "And when they found each other again, do you think they were angry about all the time they lost?" The question hung in the air like a bridge between the past and the future, and Marcus felt Sarah's eyes on him as he chose his words carefully. "I think they were so happy to be together again that the lost time didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that they were finally home." Emma smiled, satisfied with this answer, and settled back against his chest to look at the pictures one more time. Over her head, Marcus met Sarah's gaze, and for just a moment, the first time in 8 years, he saw a flicker of something in her eyes that wasn't anger or hurt or carefully maintained distance. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to find their way home after all. 2 weeks had passed since that life-changing night at the hospital, and Marcus had thrown himself into learning how to be a father with the same intensity he'd once applied to building his business empire. Every morning, he stood outside Emma's school at dismissal time, his heart racing with anticipation as he waited for that flash of auburn hair and the bright yellow backpack that had become the highlight of his days. Today was different, though. Today, Sarah had agreed to let him take Emma for their first official father-daughter outing, a trip to the Atlanta Zoo that Emma had been talking about non-stop for 3 days. As he waited by the school fence, Marcus found himself checking his watch every 30 seconds, nervous as a teenager on his first date. "Daddy Marcus." "Date." Emma's voice cut through his anxiety, like sunshine breaking through storm clouds. She ran toward the fence with that boundless energy that only 7-year-olds possess, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders and her face glowing with excitement. "Is today really Zoo Day? For real and truly?" "For real and truly," Marcus confirmed, his heart swelling at the pure joy in her voice. "I've got our tickets right here, and I checked the weather. It's perfect for seeing animals." As they walked toward his car, Emma chattered excitedly about all the animals she wanted to see, her small hand tucked trustingly in his larger one. The simple gesture still amazed him. How easily she'd accepted him into her life, how naturally she'd begun calling him Daddy Marcus, as if he'd always been there. "Will you carry me if I get tired?" she asked, as he helped her into the booster seat he'd had professionally installed the day before. "As far as you need me to," Marcus promised, and meant it completely. The zoo was everything Emma had dreamed it would be, and more. She squealed with delight at the playful otters, stood mesmerized by the majestic tigers, and peppered him with endless questions about every single animal they encountered. Marcus found himself seeing the world through her eyes. Everything was magical, wonderful, worthy of awe and excitement. But it was at the elephant exhibit that something shifted between them. Emma had grown quiet, watching a mother elephant tenderly caring for her baby, guiding it with gentle touches and protective presence. "That mama elephant loves her baby so much," Emma observed softly. "She does. Animal mothers are very devoted to their babies, just like human mothers." Emma looked up at him with those serious brown eyes. My mama loves me that much. She works so hard for us, and sometimes I hear her crying at night when she thinks I'm asleep. I think she cries because she's tired and worried about money and stuff. Marcus knelt down to her eye level, his heart breaking at the weight this 7-year-old carried. Your mama is the strongest, most loving person I've ever known. And you know what? You never have to worry about money again. I'm here now, and I'm going to take care of both of you. Promise? I promise, sweetheart. Cross my heart. Emma studied his face intently, as if searching for the truth in his features. Finally she nodded, satisfied with what she saw there. Okay, I believe you. As they continued through the zoo, Emma began opening up in ways that broke Marcus's heart and filled it simultaneously. She told him about the kids at school who made fun of her hand-me-down clothes, about how she pretended not to be hungry when there wasn't enough money for school lunch, about how she'd been saving her allowance, 25 cents a week, to buy her mama a birthday present. With each revelation, Marcus felt the weight of his abandonment more keenly. This beautiful, resilient child had been facing the harsh realities of poverty while he'd been living in luxury, completely oblivious to her existence. But he also felt something else growing inside him, a fierce, protective love unlike anything he'd ever experienced. Emma wasn't just his daughter. She was a miracle, a perfect blend of his determination and Sarah's strength, wrapped up in 7-year-old wonder and resilience. As the day wound down and they headed back to the car, Emma suddenly stopped walking and looked up at him with serious eyes. Daddy Marcus, can I ask you something really important? Of course, sweetheart, anything. Are you going to marry my mama and make us a real family? The question hit him like a physical blow, not because he hadn't thought about it, but because he had, constantly, obsessively, desperately. Would you like that? More than anything in the whole world. But Mama says you can't make people love you, no matter how much you want them to. Emma's voice grew smaller, and she says sometimes people leave even when you love them really, really much. Marcus knelt down again, taking her small hands in his larger ones. Emma, I want you to listen to me very carefully. I will never, ever leave you again. Not for any reason, not under any circumstances. You were stuck with me forever and always, whether you like it or not. Emma giggled at his mock-serious tone, but then her expression grew thoughtful again. But what about Mama? She's still hurt, isn't she? The perceptiveness of this child never ceased to amaze him. Yes, sweetheart. Your mama is still hurt, and it's going to take time for her to trust me again, but I'm not giving up on us, any of us. Are you? Emma shook her head vigorously. Never, ever. We're a team now, right? The best team in the world. That evening, as Marcus walked Emma up to her apartment, he was surprised to find Sarah waiting on the small balcony, her face tense with an emotion he couldn't quite read. She changed from her work uniform into jeans and a soft green sweater that brought out her eyes, and for a moment he was transported back to their college days when she'd wait for him just like this. Mama! Emma bounded up the stairs, her energy apparently limitless even after a full day at the zoo. We saw elephants and tigers and monkeys, and Daddy Marcus bought me a stuffed penguin, and we ate cotton candy, and I learned that giraffes have purple tongues. Sarah smiled at her daughter's enthusiasm, but Marcus noticed the smile didn't quite reach her eyes. That sounds wonderful, baby. Why don't you go inside and wash up for dinner? I need to talk to Marcus for a minute. After Emma disappeared inside, chattering to herself about their adventure, Sarah turned to Marcus with an expression that made his stomach clench with apprehension. We need to talk, she said quietly. About Emma, about expectations, about what this all means. Of course. What's wrong? Sarah was quiet for a long moment, choosing her words carefully. Emma came home from school yesterday asking why some of the other kids were saying mean things about her daddy being rich and her family being poor. Apparently, word is getting around about who you are. Marcus felt his blood run cold. What kind of things? That you're just playing house, that you'll get bored and leave again, that we're gold diggers trying to trap you. Sarah's voice was steady, but he could see the hurt in her eyes. Mrs. Peterson from down the hall made a comment about how convenient it must be for me that my baby daddy turned out to be a millionaire. The casual cruelty of people never ceased to amaze Marcus. Sarah, you know that's not— I know what I know, she interrupted, but Emma doesn't understand why people are being mean about something that makes her happy. She asked me if loving you was wrong. The words hit him like a physical blow. And what did you tell her? I told her that loving someone is never wrong, but that sometimes grown-ups make things complicated when they should be simple. Sarah looked out over the parking lot, avoiding his eyes. But Marcus, I need you to understand something. Emma's heart is completely open to you. She trusts you absolutely, loves you unconditionally, if you hurt her. I won't. You can't know that. You can't promise that, no matter how much you want to. Sarah finally looked at him, and the vulnerability in her expression nearly undid him. I can survive you breaking my heart again. I did it once. I could do it again. But Emma, she's never been disappointed by someone she loves. She doesn't know how to protect herself. Marcus moved closer, wanting to touch her but not daring to cross that line without permission. Sarah, I swear to you on everything I hold sacred, I will never hurt her. I would die before I'd let anything happen to that child. But what about when the novelty wears off? What about when being a father becomes hard work instead of zoo trips and ice cream? What about when she's a teenager and hates you? Or when she needs you at 3 in the morning because she's sick? Or when you have to choose between a business meeting and her school play? Each question was like a dagger, but Marcus understood where they came from. Those are fair concerns, and I can't prove to you that I'll choose her every time with words. I can only prove it with actions, day after day, for as long as it takes. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was very small. I'm scared, Marcus. I'm terrified that I'm letting her fall in love with someone who's going to disappear from her life. But I'm also scared of the alternative. What alternative? That this is real, that you really have changed, and I'm going to have to figure out what that means for all of us. She looked at him directly, and he saw years of carefully constructed walls wavering. Because if this is real, if you're really here to stay, then I have to face the fact that Emma isn't the only one who's been hoping for a family. The admission hung between them like a bridge neither was quite ready to cross. Marcus felt his heart racing as he realized what she was telling him, that despite everything, despite the hurt and the years and the betrayal, there was still something there. Still an ember of what they'd once had, buried deep but not quite extinguished. Sarah. Don't, she said quickly, stepping back. Don't say anything you can't take back. We're not there yet. We may never be there. Right now this is about Emma, and that's all it can be. But as she turned to go inside, Marcus caught her hand gently. Sarah, wait. There's something I need to tell you. Something you deserve to know. She turned back, and something in his expression made her go very still. What is it? I've been having my lawyers look into your father's will, the one that cut you off when you got pregnant. Marcus took a deep breath. Sarah, you were supposed to inherit your grandmother's house and a substantial trust fund. Your father had no legal right to withhold it from you. Sarah went white as sheet. What are you saying? I'm saying that for 8 years, you and Emma have been struggling financially when you should have been secure. The house, the money, it's all rightfully yours. My lawyers think we can recover everything, plus interest. The color that flooded back into Sarah's cheeks was bright red, and Marcus realized he'd made a terrible mistake in how he'd handled this revelation. You investigated my family's finances without telling me? Her voice was dangerously quiet. Sarah, I just wanted to help. Get out. Oh, the words were barely above a whisper, but they cut through the air like a blade. Sarah, please let me explain. Get out! This time she nearly shouted it, her composure completely shattered. How dare you? How dare you go digging through my family's private business without my permission? Marcus realized too late that his good intentions had been perceived as exactly what Sarah feared most. Another attempt to control her life, to make decisions for her without her input. Sarah, I'm sorry. You thought wrong, just like you thought wrong 8 years ago when you decided what was best for me. Her eyes were blazing with hurt and fury. Some things never change, do they, Marcus? You're still making decisions about my life without bothering to ask what I want. Marcus stood frozen on the apartment balcony as Sarah slammed the door behind her, the sound echoing through the night like a gunshot. Through the thin walls he could hear Emma's confused voice asking what was wrong, followed by Sarah's muffled response and the sound of rapid footsteps. He'd done it again. Somehow, in trying to help, he'd managed to hurt the people he loved most in the world. His phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Don't contact us for a few days. I need time to think. The next 3 days were the longest of Marcus's life. He drove by Emma's school each afternoon, hoping to catch a glimpse of her, but Sarah had apparently made other arrangements for pickup. He sent flowers to Sarah's work, with a note apologizing for overstepping, but they were returned unopened. He even considered showing up at their apartment, but knew that would only make things worse. On the 4th day, he was sitting in his office, staring out at the Atlanta skyline when his assistant knocked on the door. Mr. Thompson, there's a little girl here to see you. She says her name is Emma and that you're her father. Marcus's heart nearly stopped. Emma? Is her mother with her? No, sir, she's alone. She seems upset. Marcus ran to the elevator, his mind racing with possibilities, most of them terrifying. How had Emma gotten here? Was she hurt? Was Sarah okay? He found Emma sitting in the reception area, her legs swinging from the adult-sized chair, tears streaming down her face. The moment she saw him, she launched herself into his arms. Daddy Marcus, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. Sweetheart, what are you sorry for? What's wrong? Marcus held her tightly, his heart breaking at her distress. It's all my fault that Mama's mad at you. I told Tyler about the zoo and how you're rich and going to take care of us. And his mom heard and told other people, and now everyone's being mean to Mama at work. Emma sobbed against his shoulder. She cried all night, and this morning she said maybe it was a mistake to let you back into our lives. Marcus felt the bottom drop out of his world. Emma, honey, none of this is your fault, not any of it. But it is. If I hadn't talked about you, people wouldn't be saying mean things. And now Mama thinks you're going to leave us again, and I can't lose you, Daddy Marcus, I can't. Her small body shook with the force of her sobs. Marcus carried her into his private office and closed the door, then sat down with her in his lap, rubbing her back and whispering soothing words until her crying gradually subsided. Emma, listen to me very carefully. I am never, ever going to leave you. Do you understand? Never. Not even if your mama is mad at me, not even if the whole world is against us. You are my daughter, and I will always be your father, no matter what happens between your mama and me. Emma pulled back to look at him, her brown eyes red and swollen from crying. But what if she won't let you see me anymore? The question that had been haunting Marcus for days. Then I'll fight for you, legally, properly, but I'll fight, because you're worth fighting for. Can we go see her now? Can we fix this? Marcus glanced at his watch. Sarah would be working the lunch shift at the restaurant. We can try, sweetheart, but first, how did you get here? Does your mama know where you are? Emma looked down at her hands, suddenly shy. I took the bus. I saved up my allowance to pay for it. And I told Mrs. Rodriguez I was going to the library after school. The thought of his 7-year-old daughter navigating Atlanta's bus system alone made Marcus feel physically sick, but he pushed down his panic to deal with the immediate crisis. "Emma, you can never do that again. The city can be dangerous, and your mama and I would be devastated if something happened to you." "I know. I was scared the whole time, but I had to try to fix things." Marcus hugged her closer. "You are the bravest, most loving little girl in the world. But fixing grown-up problems isn't your job, okay? That's what adults are for. Then will you fix it? Will you make Mama stop being sad?" Looking into those trusting brown eyes, Marcus made a promise he had no idea how to keep. "I'm going to try, sweetheart. I'm going to try with everything I have." But first, they had to face Sarah's fury when she discovered Emma had crossed the city alone to find him. 20 minutes later, they walked into Giovanni's restaurant together, and Marcus immediately spotted Sarah behind the counter, her face pale with worry as she talked rapidly into her cell phone. The moment she saw Emma, relief flooded her features, quickly followed by anger that could have melted steel. "Emma Rose Thompson Mitchell!" Sarah's voice cut through the restaurant noise like a blade. "Do you have any idea how worried I've been? Mrs. Rodriguez called to say you never showed up at her house, and I've been calling every friend's parent I could think of." Emma shrank against Marcus's side, but she lifted her chin with stubborn determination that reminded him powerfully of her mother. "I had to go see Daddy Marcus. I had to fix what I broke." "What you broke?" Sarah's angry mask slipped, revealing the hurt beneath. "Baby, you didn't break anything." "I did! I told people about Daddy Marcus and made them say mean things about our family, and now you don't want him anymore." Emma started crying again. "But I love him, Mama. I love him so much, and I can't give him back." The raw pain in Emma's voice seemed to break something inside Sarah. She knelt down and pulled her daughter into her arms, holding her tightly while looking up at Marcus with eyes full of anguish and confusion. "Oh, baby, you didn't do anything wrong. None of this is your fault." Sarah's voice was gentle but strained. "And I never said I didn't want. I never said I wanted him to go away. Then why won't you talk to him? Why are you so sad all the time now?" Marcus watched Sarah struggle with how to explain adult complexities to a 7-year-old heart that just wanted her family to be whole. "Sometimes grown-ups need time to figure out complicated feelings," Sarah said finally. "It doesn't mean anyone did anything wrong." Emma pulled back to look at her mother seriously. "Do you love Daddy Marcus?" The question hung in the air like a challenge, and Marcus found himself holding his breath as he waited for Sarah's answer. "It's complicated, baby." "No, it's not," Emma said with the simple clarity of childhood. "Either you do or you don't. And I think you do because you keep his picture." Sarah went very still. "What picture?" "The one in your jewelry box. I saw it when I was looking for pretty earrings to wear to school picture day. You and Daddy Marcus are hugging, and you both look really, really happy." Marcus felt his heart stop. Sarah had kept a picture of them together all these years. Sarah's cheeks flushed red as she realized her secret had been discovered by her observant daughter. For a moment, the carefully constructed walls she'd built around her heart wavered, and Marcus caught a glimpse of the woman who had once loved him with everything she had. But then Emma asked the question that would change everything. "Mama, why didn't you tell Daddy Marcus about the baby you lost?" The restaurant continued its normal rhythm, servers carrying trays, customers chatting, the clatter of dishes. But their small corner of the world had gone completely silent. "Emma, what did you say?" Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "The baby," Emma repeated innocently, unaware that she had just detonated a bomb in their lives. "Mrs. Henderson was talking to her friend about it last week when I was there babysitting with you. She said you lost a baby before I was born, and that's why you were so sick when you were pregnant with me." Marcus felt the ground shift beneath his feet. "Sarah, what is she talking about?" Sarah stood slowly, her face white as paper, her hands shaking visibly. "Emma, Go sit at that table over there and color, now." "But, Mama—" "Now, Emma." The firmness in Sarah's voice sent Emma scurrying to a nearby table, but Marcus could see her watching them anxiously from the corner of her eye. "Sarah," Marcus said quietly, his heart hammering against his ribs. "What, baby?" For a long moment, Sarah said nothing, just stared at him with eyes full of pain so deep it seemed to have no bottom. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady but hollow, like she was reciting facts from someone else's life. "I was pregnant when you left. 6 weeks pregnant." Each word seemed to cost her enormous effort. "I didn't know yet. I found out a week after you were gone." The restaurant noise faded to a distant hum as Marcus processed this revelation. "You were. We were going to have a baby before Emma." "Yes, but I lost the baby at 12 weeks. Sarah's voice cracked slightly. "Miscarriage. The doctor said it was probably stress-related." Marcus felt like he was drowning, like the air had been sucked out of the room entirely. "Sarah, God, Sarah, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." "How could you have known? You were gone. I went through it alone, the morning sickness, the hope, the loss, all of it." Her composure was fracturing, years of suppressed grief finally finding its way to the surface. "Do you want to know the worst part? I was happy when I found out. Even though you'd left me, even though I was scared and alone, I was happy because I thought it meant part of you was still with me." Each word was like a physical blow, and Marcus felt himself sinking under the weight of what his abandonment had cost them both. "Sarah, if I had known." "You'd have what? Come back out of duty? Married me because you felt guilty?" The anger was returning now, mixing with her grief in a toxic combination. "I would have spent the rest of my life wondering if you really wanted us or if you just felt trapped." "That's not. I wouldn't have." But Marcus realized he didn't know what he would have done. The 25-year-old version of himself had been so consumed with fear and selfishness that he might have done exactly what Sarah feared. "After I lost the baby, I thought that was it, that God or fate or whatever was telling me I wasn't meant to be a mother, that I wasn't meant to have the family I dreamed of." Sarah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "But then, 18 months later, I found out I was pregnant again, with Emma. And you didn't try to contact me again." Sarah's laugh was bitter and hollow. "By then, your father had made it very clear what the Thompson family thought of me. And honestly, Marcus, by then I wasn't sure I wanted you to know. I wasn't sure I could survive losing another baby, and if you came back just to leave again." Marcus understood now why Sarah had been so resistant to his attempts at reconciliation, why she'd been so protective of Emma, why she'd built such high walls around her heart. She hadn't just been protecting herself from another heartbreak. She'd been protecting both of them from the trauma of loss that had nearly destroyed her once before. "The baby we lost," Marcus said quietly, "was it a boy? The ultrasound showed he was a boy." Sarah's voice broke completely then, 8 years of suppressed grief finally overwhelming her defenses. "I named him Michael. Michael James Thompson Mitchell. I know that probably sounds crazy, naming a baby I lost so early, but I needed him to be real. I needed him to matter." Marcus felt tears streaming down his face as the full weight of their shared loss hit him. They had lost a son. He had lost a son he'd never even known existed, and Sarah had grieved alone for a child that should have been the beginning of their family. "Sarah, I am so sorry. For leaving, for not being there, for everything." His voice was raw with emotion. "If I could go back and change it all." "But you can't," Sarah whispered. "We can't get Michael back. We can't get those years back. We can't undo all the pain and loss and loneliness." Across the restaurant, Emma had stopped coloring and was watching them with worried eyes, clearly sensing the emotional magnitude of whatever was happening between her parents. "What do we do now?" Marcus asked quietly. "How do we move forward from this?" Sarah looked at him with eyes that held 8 years of accumulated pain, but also something else, something that might have been hope, fragile and tentative, but real. "I don't know," she whispered. "But I'm tired, Marcus. I'm so tired of carrying all this pain alone. I'm tired of protecting myself from everything that might hurt. And most of all, I'm tired of pretending that I don't still love you." The admission hung between them like a bridge across an impossible chasm, fragile but real, offering the first genuine hope for healing they'd had since that night in the hospital. "I love you too," Marcus said quietly. "I never stopped loving you, not for one single day in 8 years. For a moment they just looked at each other, two people who had loved and lost and hurt each other in ways that seemed irreparable, but who were finally, tentatively ready to try to find their way back to each other. Emma appeared at their table, her young face serious with concern. "Are you both still sad?" Sarah reached for her daughter's hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Marcus reached for both of theirs. "Sometimes, baby," Sarah said softly, "sometimes grown-ups have to be sad about things that happened before they can be happy again." "Oh, but you're going to be happy again, right? All 3 of us together?" Sarah looked at Marcus, and for the first time in 8 years, when she smiled, it reached her eyes. "Yeah, baby, I think we are." That evening, after Emma had fallen asleep curled up between them on Sarah's small couch, her head pillowed on Marcus's lap and her feet tucked under her mother's leg, Marcus and Sarah found themselves facing the hardest conversation of their lives. The weight of the day's revelations hung heavy between them, but so did something that felt like possibility. "She's beautiful when she sleeps," Marcus whispered, gently stroking Emma's auburn hair. "She looks so peaceful. I used to wonder what our children would look like." "She has your stubborn streak," Sarah said quietly. "And your determination. When she sets her mind to something, there's no stopping her. Like today, when she decided she was going to fix our problems by taking a bus across the city. That scared me more than I can express. The thought of her alone, trying to navigate the city." Marcus shuddered. "We're going to have some serious conversations about safety. We." Sarah noticed his casual use of the plural pronoun. "Is that what we are now? A we?" Marcus looked at her carefully, trying to read her expression in the soft lamplight. "I'd like us to be, but only if that's what you want too. I won't push any more, Sarah. I won't make decisions for you or assume I know what's best. Whatever happens next, it has to be your choice." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing patterns on Emma's small hand. "I've been thinking about what you said, about my father's will, and the inheritance I was supposed to receive. Sarah, I'm sorry I went behind your back. I thought I was helping, but I realize now how that must have felt, like I was trying to control your life again." "You were trying to help," Sarah said slowly. "And maybe I need to stop being so proud and independent that I can't accept help when it's offered with love." Marcus felt his heart speed up at her use of the word love. "So you'll let me help you pursue what's rightfully yours? On one condition. We do it together, as partners. You don't make decisions for me, and I don't shut you out when things get difficult." "Partners," Marcus repeated, liking the sound of it more than he could express. Sarah shifted slightly, careful not to wake Emma. "Marcus, there's something else we need to talk about Michael." Marcus felt his throat close up at the mention of their lost child's name. "Tell me about him. Tell me everything. I was so scared when I found out I was pregnant, but also so happy because I thought it meant we were meant to be together, that love really could conquer everything." Sarah's voice was soft but steady. "I used to talk to him, you know. When I was alone in the apartment after you left, I'd put my hand on my stomach and tell him about his father, about how much you would love him when you came back. Sarah, when I lost him, I thought it was punishment for something, for not being good enough, for not fighting harder for us, for some sin I didn't even know I'd committed. The tears slipped down her cheeks, but she continued. I blamed myself for months. The doctor said stress could have been a factor, and I kept thinking if I'd been stronger, if I'd handled your leaving better. No, Marcus said firmly, his voice thick with emotion. Sarah, no, it wasn't your fault. None of it was your fault. I know that now intellectually, but the heart doesn't always listen to logic. Sarah wiped her eyes. When I found out I was pregnant with Emma, I was terrified the whole 9 months that I'd lose her too. I couldn't let myself fully believe she was real until I held her in my arms. Marcus thought about all the fear and grief Sarah had carried alone, all the milestones and moments they should have shared, and felt the familiar weight of regret settle on his chest like a stone. I should have been there, he said quietly, for all of it. The loss, the healing, Emma's birth, all of it. But you weren't. And we can't change that. Sarah looked at him directly. The question is, what do we do now? How do we honor Michael's memory while building something good for Emma's future? It was such a Sarah thing to say, practical and forward-thinking, even in the midst of grief. It was one of the qualities he'd fallen in love with all those years ago, her ability to find hope and purpose, even in the darkest circumstances. I want to set up a foundation, Marcus said suddenly, the idea crystallizing as he spoke, in Michael's name. To help single mothers who are struggling, to provide resources and support, so other women don't have to face what you faced alone. Sarah stared at him, and Marcus saw surprise, and something that might have been pride in her expression. You do that. We do that, together, if you want to. For the first time all day, Sarah smiled genuinely. I think Michael would like that. I think he'd like knowing that his brief life made a difference for other families. Emma stirred in her sleep, mumbling something that sounded like Daddy Marcus, before settling deeper into Marcus's lap with complete trust. She loves you, Sarah observed. Completely, unconditionally, the way children love before the world teaches them to be careful. I love her too, more than I knew was possible. Marcus looked down at his sleeping daughter, marveling at the perfect curve of her cheek, the way her eyelashes fanned against her skin. I want to be the father she deserves, Sarah. I want to be the man you both deserve. Then you'll have to be patient with me, Sarah said quietly. Because loving you again, trusting you again, it scares me more than anything I've ever done. But Emma needs her father, and maybe I need him too. Marcus reached across Emma's sleeping form to take Sarah's hand, and this time she didn't pull away. We'll figure it out together, he promised. Whatever comes next, we'll face it as a family. Outside, Atlanta's city lights twinkled like stars, and for the first time in 8 years, the future felt full of possibility instead of regret. They had a long road ahead of them, conversations to be had, trust to be rebuilt, and wounds to be healed. But they also had Emma's laughter, and the memory of a son they'd lost but not forgotten, and the tentative hope that love really could find a way to heal even the deepest hurts. Maybe, just maybe, they were finally ready to go home. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the lobby of his father's former law firm, holding an envelope that had arrived that morning with a note from the estate attorney. Final personal effects of Harrison Thompson, per his sealed instructions to be delivered 1 year after his death. Sarah and Emma waited beside him, and Marcus drew strength from their presence as he opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a letter in his father's unmistakable handwriting, along with a small, worn photograph. The photograph made his blood run cold. It was a picture of Sarah leaving the hospital 8 years ago, clearly taken by a private investigator. She looked devastated, her face swollen from crying, one hand protectively covering her still flat stomach. Written on the back in his father's writing, S. Mitchell, miscarriage, 12 weeks, threat eliminated. Marcus felt his legs give out, and Sarah caught his arm as he sank into a nearby chair. "Marcus, what is it?" With shaking hands, he unfolded the letter and began to read aloud, his voice breaking with each word. "Marcus, if you are reading this, I am dead, and perhaps it is time for the truth. I knew about the pregnancy, both pregnancies. I had Sarah Mitchell followed from the moment you began dating her seriously. I knew she was pregnant when you left her, and I knew she lost the baby 3 months later." Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth as the full scope of Harrison Thompson's cruelty became clear. Marcus continued reading, his voice hollow with shock. "I convinced myself I was protecting you from a mistake that would have ruined your life. But as I near my own death, I find myself haunted by the knowledge that my actions may have cost you the only happiness you ever knew. The girl had character, son. She never once tried to use her pregnancy to manipulate you or extort money from our family, even when she was struggling to pay for medical bills after the miscarriage." "He knew," Marcus whispered, looking up at Sarah with eyes full of anguish. "He knew about Michael, and he let me believe you had just moved on. He let me believe I was free while you were grieving alone." Emma, who had been listening with the serious attention she gave to all important adult conversations, suddenly spoke up. "Does this mean Grandpa Harrison was a bad man?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus looked at his daughter, this beautiful, innocent child who deserved truth but also deserved to believe in goodness, and made a choice that would have been impossible for him 8 years ago. "It means Grandpa Harrison was scared," Marcus said carefully. "Sometimes when grown-ups are scared of change, they make bad choices. But that doesn't excuse what he did to our family." Sarah had gone very quiet, and Marcus could see her processing not just the revelation, but what it meant for their future. "All these years, I blamed myself for not fighting harder for us. I thought maybe if I'd been stronger, more persistent. No." Marcus stood and pulled her into his arms, not caring that they were in a public lobby. "None of this was your fault. None of it. My father manipulated both of us, and I was too weak and too scared to question what he told me." "But what does this change?" Sarah asked quietly. "He's gone, Marcus. We can't get those years back. We can't bring Michael back. What does knowing this actually change?" Emma tugged on Marcus's sleeve before he could answer. "Daddy Marcus, can we go visit Michael?" Indeed, the simple request from their 7-year-old daughter cut through all the complex adult emotions and went straight to the heart of what needed to happen. An hour later, they stood together in the small memorial garden behind the hospital where Sarah had lost their first child. There was no headstone. Sarah had never been able to afford one, but she had planted a small oak tree here with a simple plaque that read, "Michael James Thompson Mitchell. Brief, but beloved." Marcus knelt beside the tree, which had grown significantly in the years since Sarah had planted it, and placed his hand on the rough bark. "I'm sorry I wasn't there for you, son. I'm sorry you never got to meet your sister, or run around the yard, or learn to throw a baseball." His voice broke completely. "But I want you to know that your mama never forgot you, and neither will I." Emma stepped forward with the seriousness she brought to all important moments. "Hi, Michael. I'm your sister Emma. I brought you some flowers from our new garden." She placed a small bouquet of daisies beside the tree. "Mama and Daddy Marcus are going to be married soon, and we're going to be a real family. I wish you could be with us, but Mama says you're watching over us from heaven." Sarah stared at Emma in shock. "Sweetheart, we never said anything about getting married." Emma looked between her parents with exasperation. But you love each other, and we're a family, and families get married. That's how it works." Marcus felt his heart racing as he realized this was the moment, not perfect or planned, but perfect in its imperfection. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the small velvet box he'd been carrying for 3 weeks, waiting for the right moment that he now realized would never come unless he created it. "Emma's right," he said, dropping to one knee beside Michael's tree. "Sarah Mitchell, I loved you 8 years ago. I've loved you every day since, and I will love you until the day I die. I can't undo the past, but I can promise you a future. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that you and Emma are the most important things in my world?" Sarah stared at him, tears streaming down her face, and for a moment Marcus was terrified she would say no, that too much damage had been done for love to bridge the gap. But then Emma clapped her hands together and declared, "Say yes, Mama! Say yes, so we can be a real family!" Sarah laughed through her tears, and the sound was like sunshine after a long storm. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, Marcus Thompson, I'll marry you. I'll marry you even though you're stubborn and overprotective and you still think you can solve everything with money." "Hey!" Marcus protested as he slipped his grandmother's ring, the one he'd had reset with Sarah's birthstone, onto her finger. "I'll marry you because Emma needs her father, and because I'm tired of being afraid of happiness, and because—" Sarah's voice grew soft and serious. "Because Michael would want us to be a family. All of us, including him in our hearts." As they held each other beside their son's memorial tree, with Emma chattering excitedly about wedding plans and flower arrangements, Marcus felt a peace he hadn't experienced since he was 25 years old and thought love could conquer anything. 8 years later, he'd learned that love couldn't conquer anything, but it could heal everything, if you were brave enough to let it. "Welcome home," Sarah whispered against his chest, and Marcus realized that home had never been a place, or a house, or even a city. Home was this woman in his arms, and the daughter who had brought them back together, and the memory of a son they would carry with them always. They'd lost years. They'd lost their first child. They'd lost the easy innocence of young love. But they'd found something deeper: forgiveness, maturity, and the kind of love that survives the worst that life can offer. As they walked away from the memorial garden together, Emma skipping ahead and calling back questions about whether she could be the flower girl at their own wedding, Marcus looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thank you, Michael. Thank you for bringing us home to each other." And for just a moment, he could swear he felt a gentle breeze that felt like blessing, like approval, like love that transcends time and loss, and even death itself. They were finally, truly, completely home.